there. Welcome to A Cup of Security for our kickoff episode. I'm super excited to be here, and I can't wait to get this started with you guys and to start building our community and talking about all things security in a super easy, digestible way. Um, our goal here is to take out all those like weird and overwhelming techie words that make security very confusing, doesn't make sense, it's overwhelming, there's a lot to learn. We're going to take all that out and we're going to keep it super short and sweet. And we're going to do so while we enjoy our cup of coffee or tea. Um, I myself, I drink a lot of water, but for anybody else who's out there, let me know in the comments below what you guys like to drink. What's your favorite types of coffee, favorite types of tea? My mug that I have here, I'm actually going to do a shout out to the Charles River Museum. If you're ever in Massachusetts, near Lowell, Massachusetts, super cool place to check out, especially if you're into the Industrial Revolution. They have a lot of awesome stuff there, and it used to be home to a watch factory. So a little bit about me before we start diving into our first episode of why security is important to me, why I want to talk to you guys about it. So I have been a support engineer at various different companies over the years. So yes, I am one of the guys that tells you to turn it off and on again, guys or gals. Um, and the one thing that I've always noticed in working with regular people, like all of us, is that there's a lot of extra information in there that's confusing. It's not written in the language of everyday people, and I'm talking about tech manuals, user manuals, like user guides, FAQs, a lot of stuff that has to do, not even just in security, but in the tech world. A lot of it just doesn't make sense for everyone. So then that plays right into my love of security. I've loved security for a long time, but again, I saw that same problem of um, we we overcomplicate things. We make things very overwhelming and frustrating, and it's to the point where you can't really understand it, so you don't want to be bothered. There's a lack of enthusiasm. Well, we're here to get rid of all that. We want to make it super digestible and easy and talk about stuff that you deal with every single day. So you get those robo phone calls probably every single day. Maybe your mom or dad hears about security stuff in work. Maybe in school you hear about security stuff about, using things like two-factor authentication. What is that? What is phishing? We hear about phishing a lot. We hear about the word vishing. Again, all of these like fancy technical words that for a lot of us just don't make sense. So we want to make it super easy to understand and have a good time. The whole point of this whole channel is to have a good time while we're talking about security. All of our episodes are going to be under 15 minutes because I want to ideally make this so that you can enjoy this episode or this show while you're drinking a cup of coffee or tea or water or whatever your beverage of choice is. It's just meant to be little snippets of info. So with all of that being said, one of the ways that I want to kick off this channel is to talk about something that's super important. That I would say is one of the most important elements to start with in when we're thinking about how we secure our lives is passwords. Passwords, I know they are a frustrating element for most people between the password complexity, having a different password for each account, having the password have like 8 million characters. Remember these things. This is all stuff that, yes, it is important and we're going to talk about it, but I want to talk more about, first start off with why passwords are important. Okay, so let's think for a second. What are some of the things that we typically do before we leave home to go anywhere? So, whether we're leaving to go to work, we're leaving to take our kids to school, go to dinner with family and friends, we're leaving our home. What are some of those things that we do? Take a second and think about it. We may grab, our purse, a wallet, keys, phone, lunch for the kids, anything that we need for our day. And then before we do that, we usually lock our door, right? Whether we lock it with a key or if we have like a electronic alarm, or we have a fancy alarm through like our iPhone, we lock the door. We lock the door to protect everything that's inside of our house from bad guys getting in, to protect our family and friends. So we take all of those steps to make sure that everything inside of our home is locked so the bad guys can't get in. We do that to protect our family, our friends, and our belongings, right? The same thought process, believe it or not, can be applied to any of our mobile devices or any of our electronic devices, whether it's a Kindle, a tablet, a phone, whatever. Any of those devices essentially that have a screen that we can go beep, beep, beep. Okay. We need to secure those too. And why is that? Well, when we think about it, a phone, because most of the time we have a phone on us pretty much the entire day. Some of us may have several phones. If we have like a phone, if we work at a hospital, we may have a phone for work and then a phone for home. Or if you work any kind of technology type of position or law enforcement, anything like that. So we may have two phones. So in that case, those phones, those devices are the doors to our digital life. Well, what do you mean? Well, think about all the things that we do on our phones. So on our phones, we use apps. We may access banking information. We may check the stock market. We may check our kids' report card. We may check for emails from our doctors. There's so much information on a phone or on a device because they get carried around with us all day. More times than not, we're using those more than a computer, if we have a computer. So with all that being said, we have to make sure that we're properly securing that digital door to our digital life. Think about it that way. Again, we have the door to our home. A device is a door to your digital life, to all of your data that exists, all your photos, your texts, all of your information about your family, your friends, social security numbers, all of these pieces of information that we really don't think too much about that exists on a phone. So that brings into play the idea of a password and the importance of passwords. So for a long time, the kind of like going method of creating a good password was using a password that had, 50 billion characters, special characters like an exclamation point, an asterisk. None of this we're going to remember. So, and then they also brought out a thing about how, we need to have one of those long-winded passwords for each account, which is true. So let's make it easier, right? That's our goal here on a cup of security. So when we're making a password, the best thing that we can do is to string together a phrase, so a bunch of words that are not associated with you online at all. So an example could be, a goose is purple. It's funny, it makes us laugh, but it's in no way related to you. It can't be found about you online. It cannot be connected to you, and that's the key. because the reason why that's important is because people who perform something that we'll talk about later, that's basically called social engineering, if you've heard of that word at all. And if you haven't, we're going to talk about it. They will basically try to get information about you online through like your Facebook or your Twitter or your YouTube or anything they can find about you online and come up with a password that they think is your password. So how do we get around that? We use a password that has several words that are not related to you whatsoever in it. We do that. That's step one. The silver goose is orange. Makes 0 sense, has no connection to you. So that's one step. The second step is using a different password for each account. This is super important. This is honestly, if you're going to take one thing away from our entire video today, please take this away. Use one password per account. The reason why that is important is because if you have password, test 1 2 3 4, horrible password, but if you have that as a password and then you use that on 8 different accounts, so your Gmail, your Wells Fargo, your kid's school account, your doctor's account, all of those accounts are connected to that one password, which means that if a hacker or a bad guy gets access to that password, they now have access to all of those accounts. And when they're doing their research, they'll see that that password meets all of those accounts. And they will be able to take your financial information about your kid's school, their school schedules, when they get out of school, information we do not want bad guys to have. That is why it is essential to use a different password for each account. Because if you use one password for all of your accounts, the door to let the bad guys in just gets about 5 times bigger. We don't want that. The third point that we'll talk about is password manager. Do you know what password manager is? Have you seen one before? So the way that a password manager works, and we'll show some examples, the way that it works is you have one password that you have to remember as opposed to 50 million passwords. I'm exaggerating. You have one password, and then you can store all of those passwords within a password manager app. But all you have to remember is one password. And you can make, they oftentimes will actually, kind of show what they look like, but you can oftentimes like create unique passwords inside of the app. So you don't even need to think about a fancy phrase. You can just go in and make a password right in there and then save it in your website that you like. So password manager is another option in terms of using, different passwords for each account. It makes it a lot easier. The other thing that I like about password managers is, do you guys ever use like the autofill feature in your web browser? So you may go to a login page and you can autofill it. And we'll show an example of that as well. With using a password manager, you can do that, but you can do it securely. Future episode is we'll actually go over what a password manager looks like and how to kind of use one. Just so that it's not this kind of taboo thing that you've never heard of. All right, so let's recap because we're almost finished our cup of tea here. And remember, we said the whole point of our whole goal here is to be able to finish the content during time of drinking a cup of coffee or tea. So we talked about passwords. We talked about how passwords are the doors to our digital life. They keep the bad guys out the way that our door at home keeps the bad guys out. So there's that. There's point one. Point two, most important point, if you're going to remember anything, is different password for each account. And number three, using a password manager to make your life easier. This way you only have to remember one password. I hope you guys found this informative. If you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments below. Any questions that you have that you want to cover here, again, this is a conversation. Leave them in the comments below, and I will catch you guys next week. Stay safe and enjoy your cup of security.